tuned in to The Andrew Lawton Show.
We'll also just pivot very abruptly, because there's no natural transition here, to this story out of Ottawa. Now, we had on the weekend at True North Nation, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation very generously and graciously sponsor us, and our good friend Kris Sims was there, who is our favorite guest every Monday, because, well, she's our only guest that's on every Monday, but she'd be our favorite anyway. Kris, always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having us on, Andrew. And I couldn't even find my original backdrop because it's still stuck in the car. I had to grab this old one. So yeah, it was really great being at that conference.
Well, it was good to have you there. So we did a home renovation, my wife and I, back in the summer. And, we were trying to, scrimp and save and, spend as little as we had to while getting quality. I feel we got a steal looking at the Government of Canada's reno budget. What was this? $8 million for a barn at Rideau Hall.
Yeah.
Am I misreading this?
Nope. You're not. It's really bad. So my partner in crime, Franco Terrazzano, our federal director, and our investigative journalist, Ryan Thorpe, they work away there in Mordor, also known as Ottawa, in our office. And they dug up these documents, Andrew, that showed taxpayers paid more than $8 million for what is being referred to as a barn on the grounds of Rideau Hall. So Rideau Hall is where our Governor General lives. Right now, it's also actually where the Prime Minister of Canada lives too, in the Rideau Cottage, because 24 Sussex is so dilapidated. So on those grounds, they built this storage facility, lack of a better term, that is somehow net zero. And if this is an indicator of how much net zero is going to cost us as far as the government goes, folks, just put a fork in it. We're done. We can't afford this. They blew $8 million on this thing. And so it's apparently to store vehicles and to wash vehicles and stuff. They started shovels in the ground July of 2020, and they took about a year or so to finish it off. So just imagine, July 2020. This is when we were getting locked down, businesses were getting shut down, people losing their livelihoods, everybody getting, a lot of people getting salary reductions and pay cuts. No. The NCC forks out $8 million for what is essentially a glorified garage.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been hearing for years now about all the issues with finding a place for the Prime Minister to live, because, 24 Sussex Drive is like this rat-infested... I'm not talking about the politicians that live there, like literal like rats in the cobwebs and all of that. And then, so they have to stay at Rideau Cottage, but then they're also renovating and building like additions at Harrington Lake. And then you hear about this. It's like, you go to Northern Ontario or rural Alberta and you'll find like 4 guys named Chuck that'll build a barn for $82 and a 2-4 in a weekend.
Yeah, exactly. As Franco put it, he's not a farmer, but our buddies in Brooks can sure as heck build you a barn or even a garage.
They should have put it out to tender. Let your buddies in Brooks make a bid on this rather than Ottawa's finest.
Yes, exactly. And see, this is the problem. People can hear $8 million and just kind of roll their eyes and let it glaze over. No, really. Think about what $8 million is in real money. If you look up what is often referred to as Ottawa's fanciest palatial mansion, it's on sale right now on a real estate website. It isn't even $8 million. And we're talking like marble, everything, jacuzzi tubs, like fancy stuff that we'd see on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous when you and I were kids. They blew this on a garage. So this is just indicative of what the National Capital Commission is capable of doing when it comes to blowing money. And for anybody who lives outside of the Ottawa bubble, you don't know what the NCC is. What it is basically a glorified Parks and Rec department that is only in the Ottawa-Gatineau little bubble there. It's usually responsible for things like Tulip Festival and cutting the weeds out of the Rideau Canal. But they're also the geniuses that blow this kind of money on a garage. They're also the ones who have built a bonus mansion up at Harrington Lake for who knows who to live in. These folks just waste money in spectacular fashion. And Andrew, these are the same people who are crying poor. They want a raise. They want more taxpayers' money. They want to spend more taxpayers' money on 24 Sussex. Yeah. And so this is just a highlight. Like, we have unmoney right now. We are so deeply in debt. We're more than $1 trillion in debt federally. If you and I started counting right now, Andrew, if we had like a barrel of loonies, it would take us 30,000 years to count to 1 trillion.
That's
how
some
much
great data visualization there, Kris. But I know it's insane. And look, just to reiterate this point, $175 million is what the NCC wants to renovate, or no, what they spent to renovate and maintain properties. Sorry, 135 for the renovation. They want 175 to restore them. So basically, they want, over 300 million in the span of like 15, 20 years to do this. And I mean, the NCC is basically... It's like bureaucrats and interior decorators combined, like both of whom want to blow more money than a project budget has. It's like, I never thought that was the most dangerous combination, but I think it is. Interior decorator, bureaucrats.
They've created a monster, right? Because imagine having endless monies, right? No budget. All those home reno shows that you watch, right?
Yeah.
Usually they'll stop about 10 minutes in and they'll have that moment where the couple's like, oh, can we really afford this? Imagine that part never happening. Like ever. And then just double the cost on top of everything else because it's government. That is what we are all paying for with the NCC. Like, for the amount of money that they spend renovating Harrington Lake, to give you an idea, you could have bought Avril Lavigne and Chad Kroger's mansion. You could have bought Halle Berry's cottage up in the Laurentians. You could have bought, there was a really famous hockey player. You and I know about the same amount of hockey, NHL.
Yeah.
You could have bought his house, his fancy mansion in London, Ontario, all combined.
Wait, there's a hockey player who has a fancy mansion in London. I live in London, Ontario. I didn't know this.
Apparently
Anyway.
there is. Yeah, it's apparently the most expensive house in London, Ontario, and some NHLer dude owns it. I stopped following hockey in 1994.
Well, Justin Bieber lives like, 45 minutes from me. You could have used that one as a... I don't know how much his house is worth, though.
Right? And so they spent more just renovating one cottage at Harrington Lake than all of those places I just described to you. You could buy them. Like, you could buy them outright. Yeah. So this is where we're highlighting this, folks, that we just can't afford this. And this is the sort of mentality and thinking that is the reason why we are more than $1 trillion in debt. So the next time we're saying, folks, the government needs to tighten its belt, don't let them get away with the idea of, okay, what do you want to cut first? Healthcare or education? That's just nonsense. How about you scrap the NCC?
When C11 goes into full force, we'll do like some CanCon knockoff of Property Brothers. We'll call it Property Bureaucrats. We'll just have the NCC go into like little suburban families' homes and, renovate them. And when the person says, well, I don't know how we're going to afford that, the NCC people will be like, what? Sorry, I've never heard those words before. What do you mean?
I need my universal translator. I actually would watch that show. So especially if you've never
CTF should produce it. You should do your own like little spoof comedy of like, the NCC version of a home reno show. I'll chip in a couple $100 for that.
Could you imagine just like Franco in like a tool belt with like a level and like a hammer just doing stuff?
I want Franco to do the whole like homes on homes thing with the the overalls and the tool belt. And then you'll be in there with your hard hat directing it along. We can get, Scott Hennig to, go in there with the pallets for the paint and just everyone gets to pick it up. I think we're onto something here.
There'd be so many smashed fingers and bruised toes, but it would be funny and we would do it under budget. So it would get done. It would be just like that Simpsons episode where they had a load-bearing poster. Remember when they rebuilt Flanders' house and it all fell down and they took that poster down? But this, you got to laugh or cry. I know folks are watching this going, how could you be laughing at $8 million? It's either that or cry, folks. Because if you sat down and tried, I guarantee you would not be able to blow even $4 million building a garage. Double that. And you paid for it. So that can get depressing real fast. And this is the key. Bureaucrats and politicians can't stand it when you mock them. They can't stand it. It really bothers them because if they stay in power long enough, they start thinking they're like some duke and you are a feudal serf. So if you laugh at them and you point at them and you mock them and ridicule them, it really gets under their skin. And hopefully we'll be able to get to them and make them change their behavior.
Yeah, they're just not used to any real criticism or pushback, which is why a lot of these things just tend to exist without any sort of challenging and criticism. And I think that, having members of parliament that are going to stand up there and say no is important. But it's amazing how much of this is just allowed on a discretionary basis, like how much power is kind of relegated to these people and how large their budgets actually are.
This is when we get into things like permanent government, right?
Mhm.
And it's one of those things where you can hear, Trump talk about the swamp and you can hear about deep state and all that stuff, but just rinse all the politics out of it for a moment. Say that it's benevolent for some reason or objective or rational. We have a permanent government and it's always there. So whenever you hear somebody refer to a deputy minister, that doesn't mean the junior backbencher sitting in the House of Commons. That means a bureaucrat who is heading up a department. That bureaucrat almost always is paid way more than that elected politician cabinet minister, okay? And nobody knows their name. They can almost never be fired. And the ability to hold them to account is almost impossible. So, and they have a ton of staff and underlings under them. That's the department side of things. And no matter who gets elected through the revolving election door, okay, the bureaucrats in that department, they see you as a Johnny-come-lately. If they don't like dealing with you, they put their feet up and they water a houseplant, Andrew, and they wait. They wait for a change of government because they see themselves as the permanent state.
It was wonderful to see you Saturday at True North Nation, you representing CTF, and then you also had our friend Liam Dunn, who was there with Generation Screwed. Wait. Okay, what? Kris, I've got the name for your show.
Okay.
Generation Screwdriver. It's the Canadian Taxpayers Federation Fixer-Upper Show. Generation Screwdriver. Okay.
You did it. You coined it. Go buy the domain.
I'm gonna do the Ezra Levant thing and book the domain name right away just in case because I need to have that. No,
I've seen
it's
him
all
do
yours.
It.
Okay, everyone. That's coming soon to CTF, and you'll of course learn about the show because with C11 it'll be forced to your homepage as authentic Canadian content. All right, Kris Sims, always good to talk to you. We will check in next Monday.
Take care, Andrew.
Thanks for listening to the Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.